Well, the national debate today is about gun control, and it's an interesting debate that is taking a lot of twists and turns, and I am very honored to have with us today Major General Jerry Curry is with us. Of course, he's a decorated combat veteran, Army aviator, paratrooper, ranger, and has served his country in multiple capacities, and has been a presidential appointee in 3 different administrations. Major General, nice to have you, sir. First of all, thank you for your service.
Good morning. It's a delight to be with you, and thank you very much for having me.
You've put out an interesting article, sir, about the fact that it's not a gun violence problem, it's a lack of leadership. That's quite a statement. Where are you heading with this?
Well, let's take something that just happened recently. We had this business in Michigan where the labor unions were talking about right-to-work states, and they were out in the streets. They beat up this newspaper reporter, or TV reporter, as you probably remember. Mm-hmm. They were cursing in the streets. They had all sorts of violence. They said there's going to be blood in the streets. They did all sorts of evil, terrible things, and there was total silence from our political leadership. Nothing out of the White House, nothing out of the Congress. And if we had real leaders on Capitol Hill and we had real leaders in the White House, what they would have done was stood up and said, this is wrong, it's unacceptable, America will not stand for this. Anybody who does this is going to get in trouble. We will prosecute you. This is hate crime, hate speech, and we will prosecute you and put you in jail, and you will serve your time. And so that's leadership. The reason I know it so well is because of my military days, and I think of the guy in World War II who was a sergeant who was surrounded by the Germans, and he had his squad there with him, and he couldn't get them to get out of their foxholes and start shooting. So he walked up on this little hill all alone, bullets whizzing by him back and forth, turned around and looked at them, and he says, now you SOBs, get up here and stand alongside me and shoot back. And they did, and they won the battle. That's leadership. And that's what America needs today. We don't need a lot of conversations. We need some leadership.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm just trying to have you help me now. How does this tie over to the gun problem? Because today, as you know, the Vice President will be meeting with pro-gun people. I've had the opportunity to be with Wayne LaPierre on a lot of occasions. He's certainly taking a strong leadership position on the Second Amendment. But we're hearing the threats of a potential executive order trumping the Second Amendment. I mean, this is leadership in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. That's the kind of leadership we're getting. It's all in the wrong direction. You know, when I was a little boy, I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania. When I grew up on that farm, in the little country school that we had, on the wall of every classroom was a copy of the 10 Commandments framed and stuck on the wall. And the teacher throughout the day, if a student did something that was contrary, and it was not Christian, it was secular, the teacher would turn to the student and said, you see this here, number 5, what it says? That's the way you ought to be. And the result of that is that the people who left that school all had a standard. And that's what we're missing today in America. We need a president not who's talking about ways to get around the Constitution with the Second Amendment. He ought to be out there talking about, this is the kind of action that we expect, this is the way you ought to act, this is what you ought to be doing, these are the important things in life. And he's not doing that, and as a result, all sorts of things are happening, like that Michigan business I told you. The worst thing of it is neither the president nor a single member of Congress stood up there and decried that terrible treatment and action in Michigan. If they had done that, it was only about 4 days later that we had the shooting in Connecticut. And who knows, maybe that boy would have rethought it under those conditions.
All right, so where does this go with gun laws? I mean, how are you seeing the gun issue in gun laws?
I think that they will do every underhanded trick that there is to prevent Americans from owning guns, to prevent Americans from buying ammunition. And I think that's where they're headed, and they're trying to figure out how to get there and get around the Second Amendment.
All right, so how are we going to protect our kids then?
I think that we need to do a couple, whether people like it or not. We need to have some standards in our society, and they need to be taught to our children in our homes and in our schools. I think that's very important. If it turns out, for example, that the teachers want to be armed, they want to carry, they want to own guns, then I think the teachers ought to have the right to be armed and to be trained and to have concealed carry permits for the weapons right there in the classroom.
Part of this debate that we're in now, especially with the fiscal cliff and everything, is going to impact the military tremendously on its budget. What's your response?
Well, they are going to do their best to destroy the military. The only way that you can keep the government behaving itself and not becoming a tyranny is to have a strong military. And their intention, their deliberate aim, I believe, now I may be wrong on this, by the way, as you can tell, I have strong opinions on many things, but I think that that's what they're going to go to try to do. They're going to try to actually destroy the effectiveness of the military. And I think that we, the American people, are going to have to prevent that.
Well, how do we do that, General? How do we do that? I mean, we seem to be just kind of numb from the aggressiveness of this administration and pushing us to the limits. We just seem to be numb by it. We're like the frog in the boiling pot.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct. I'm afraid we are. But we need to vote the right people into office, and then we need to take stands publicly opposing these kinds of things that they're doing that are detrimental to the safety and the freedom of America.
Have you got any thoughts about the nominee to become the next Secretary of Defense, Senator Hagel?
You put me in an awkward position, but my personal judgment is forget the man. He's not going to do anything good for America. He may do a lot good for the president and for the Democratic Party. He may do exactly what they want, and I think that's why he's been selected, by the way. But he's certainly not going to stand up for the United States of America, and he's not going to stand up for our armed forces. And my judgment is he's going to be an absolute disgrace.
You know, while we're having this debate about potential more gun control and more debate on violence, gun sales in the United States are skyrocketing. I mean, and the NRA membership just within the last 3 weeks has gone through the roof. What does that tell you?
That tells you that the American people are not stupid, and they have figured this out, and they have figured out that this administration intends to confiscate their guns, and they are doing all, and they won't be able to buy new ones. And so they are doing all they can now to prepare for the time coming when they won't be able to legally go out and buy guns.
Okay, well listen, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate your passion, and keep up the good work. And if people want to learn more about your articles and writings, where do they go?
Well, probably the easiest thing to do is go to Amazon.com and get one of my books. The latest one is called The Dream Continues.
Okay, The Dream Continues. Thank you, sir, and again, thank you for your service. Blessings on you today.
Bye-bye.